Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov. It's also a new month in case you were missing out on that, which is a very important thing to keep in mind because when we get to the Amidah done privately, there is a special paragraph that you will need to recite. I will point it out again when we get closer. So, we are on the threshold of a very non-Jewish holiday, Valentine's Day, about a very Jewish topic, which is to say love, romance. Now you might be looking at me saying, but Rabbi, I thought, tradition. What is the traditional way of couples being brought together in Judaism? Matchmaker, right, of course. As I love to say, yes and no. That is to say, yes, matchmaking did play a huge part in Jewish culture for a couple thousand years, but it's not the matchmaking that you think it is. That is to say, it is not the matchmaking that is exhibited as the central theme of the play Fiddler on the Roof. So let's work through, first of all, whether or not matchmaking is the ideal, and then work through why we do it, and then work through what it actually was and how that can teach us about something about our own relationships, romantic or otherwise, in the modern world. So first of all, is matchmaking the ideal? Well, take a look at the Tanakh. How much matchmaking do we see? Almost none. We get one very famous match being made, which is the Rebecca for Isaac. That's it. That's the only time we get somebody making the match, and ultimately the person making the match there is God, arranging for Rebecca to be the one to answer the prayer of Eliezer, the servant, at the exact moment. It's not exactly your typical matchmaking scenario, and certainly not something that we are expected to replicate. No matter how much time you may spend on Tinder, just spinning the roulette wheel is not going to yield as good of results as what happened there. Of course, because the ultimate test in the case of Rebecca was about the goodness of herself, not about how good her picture looked on your phone. So instead, we see time and time again that couples are made because they come together. We get no inkling that Abraham and Sarah were a match. We get no suggestion that there was a match being made for Jacob and Rachel. Indeed, there was a little bit of a curveball there with Leah, but the ultimate marriage, the one that he went looking for the first time, was definitely not a match. Likewise, when we see Moses, nobody makes a match for Moses except himself, and time again throughout the rest of Tanakh, the paradigm that we see is of people choosing for themselves. Indeed, the excerpt that we had from Shirat Shirim at the beginning of our service reminds us of the power of romantic love to bring two people together. All right, that's beautiful, wonderful. We had an idea of love long before courtly love got going, which led to the modern celebrations of Valentine's Day. So where did matchmaking come from then, Rabbi? Why aren't we just letting people be free and, pick whoever they want? Where did the matchmaking theme come from? Any ideas? Anybody here? A study of ancient or classical social structures and their economies. I know, it's strange bedside reading, but what are you going to do? Right idea, wrong time period. So we got to push that clock way back a few thousand years. It is not just in the Pale settlement where Fiddler on the Roof takes place in Russia, but going all the way back to the land of Israel in the early days, matchmaking was kind of essential as a precaution. Most people lived in small communities. You didn't have anything like a city of Orlando's size and scope, and thus you didn't have the options to choose a partner from among a large selection. There might be only half a dozen people that are of similar age as the person who wants to get married, and that limits things. And on top of that, because it is a small area, 2 or 3, 4 of them might be your first cousins. And that was not something that was encouraged, generally speaking. Technically wasn't forbidden at the time, but that's a whole nother conversation. It definitely still was not encouraged. So matchmaking was a very important way of keeping the population healthy, but it was also a very important way of keeping the economy healthy. I don't mean for the benefit of everyone, I mean for the benefit of the couple. Remember that in those days, the economy was basically an agrarian system. People lived off what they grew out of the dirt. And that meant you needed to be in a family that had some dirt. No dirt, no food. No food, and you might be able to get by on the tzedakah of your community, but that really wasn't the life that most people were hoping to have. And so families would often plan who to marry whom in order to ensure that there would be enough land to go around and enough support from the rest of the family to make sure that new couples could indeed live off what they would work to build together. It was very practical, very sensible, and now you're probably wondering what happened to all the love that we saw in Tanakh? Where is the passion of Shir HaShirim? If two families are sitting down when the children are but children, making a betrothal that, little boy A and little girl B are going to get married in 10 years, I don't think we can say that there was a lot of passion going on at that moment. And this is where the matchmaking model breaks down, because despite what Tevye thunders, it is not the papa who has the final say in determining the match, it's the kids. When they come of age, under Jewish law, they have the right to refuse. The parents can make a match while they are minors, and that match is considered to be tentatively binding, meaning that if they wanted to break it off, they would have to go through the legal rigmarole of doing so. But to actually move from that betrothal to marriage requires the absolute consent of everybody involved. Both husband and wife have to agree and stand under the chuppah and do everything that is necessary for a Jewish wedding. And the parents can thunder as much as they want that I've picked this person for you, but if they don't want to get married to that person, they cannot be forced under Jewish law. They cannot be made to get married to someone against their will. Judaism does not treat our children as though they are chattel. Yes, we will invest great time and effort trying to help plan their future with them and for them, much to their chagrin even in the modern world, but we also have to recognize that ultimately they get the final say of who they are going to be, who they are going to be with, and what their life will look like. Now, for those of you who are still younger, I do encourage you to listen to the adults around you because they do have the benefit of experience and wisdom that they are trying to share. They're not trying to ruin your life or dictate your life, but they are there to help. You do have the final say, but listen first before you storm out of the room and slam the door. It wouldn't be the first time it ever happened in a home, right? So what then does Judaism say in a structure such as this of love? Let's imagine that we are in the 1500s, the year 1000, 500, whatever century you want to be in, and matchmaking is still the most common way of bringing two people together, and they may have the final say, but in the end, like I said, there may be only 3 other people that are even on the option, and the one that the parents arranged for, that might be the best thing going, even if you don't necessarily feel the power of passion at that moment. Well, Judaism says, that's okay. You need to find a way to build it together. Not it's okay to live in a loveless, passionless marriage. That is not the ideal in Judaism. Indeed, the idea that two partners would come together in loving and joyous intimacy is a big part of the rabbinic ideal of what a happy life should be. But sometimes the union comes first and the passion comes second. And how does that happen? Well, by a change of mind, by a perception, a different framework of living. According to Pirkei Avot, there are 2 types of love in the world. And they're not only talking about romantic love, they mean love in its broadest sense. There are types of love that depend on something, and types of love that depend on nothing. The type of love that depends on something will not last. Meaning, if you are looking at your relationship, whether it be a friend or the match made for you or the person you picked for yourself and chose to marry however many years ago, if you look at them as a source of gratification, This is the thing that will provide me, I don't know, a salary, will provide me with home-cooked meals, will provide me with various forms of pleasure and entertainment. That is not going to produce an enduring, loving relationship. That's a fine contractual way to deal with a carpenter or somebody at your office, but that is not the ideal for a spousal relationship. Instead, the ideal is held up of a love which depends on nothing. That is to say, to give yourself openly and freely to this other person, not looking for what you get from it, but simply because you wish to give to them the totality of yourself. And when two people are willing to do that for each other, recognize in each other that there is another human being, a spark of the divine that is sharing their life with them, when two people are willing to open each other up to that, then indeed love can thrive even where it might have been manufactured by parental agreement some years before. Love is not an easy thing to find, and once found, it is not an easy thing to keep. Love, again, both in romantic as well as platonic relationships, is something that requires constant vigil, watching out. Am I continuing to look at this relationship merely as something that I can extract value from? Or am I looking at this relationship as something that I am wholeheartedly pouring myself into? Answering that question goes a long way to providing not only the stability of a loving relationship, but also the true joy that can come from it. Shabbat Shalom.